Before we begin this Microsoft Digital event, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we live and work throughout Australia, as well as the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people viewing this event today. We pay our respects to elders both past, present and emerging, and recognise and celebrate their continuing connection to land, waters and community. Our reverence also extends to all First Nation and Indigenous peoples, as well as their ancestral lands.
Welcome to this Microsoft Digital event. Before we get started, there's a few things we wanted to point out so you can make the most of this experience. Firstly, the windows you are seeing can be resized. You can maximise, minimise, and drag the windows to the size you prefer. You can also use all the widgets in the bottom middle of your screen. Simply click on the widgets icons to launch them. Secondly, we have specialists on hand to answer your questions in real time. You can type in your question using the Q&A window at any time during the event, and we'll answer them as soon as we can. Lastly, you can access additional resources by clicking on the links in the resources section. We hope you enjoy this Microsoft Digital event. Let's get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today this afternoon. Awesome to be here with such a great crowd. My name is Leon Welicki, and I am the Chief Product Officer for Power Apps at Microsoft. And I'm joined by Ben Walters, who is a Senior Product Manager in the team, and together, today we'll talk about how to accelerate innovation with AI-powered low-code tools. The way in which we do it, we will do it with a very simple agenda with 3 topics. First, we'll do a quick intro to low-code, just to level set. And then we will talk how copilots augment what you can do with low-code. And finally, once we learn about all this awesomeness, we will learn how to deploy it safely and securely. So low-code, copilots, and deploy them safely. So let's get to it. Business applications have been at the forefront of innovation. And this is not accidental. They generate a lot of business value. If you think about the last technology waves, for example, let's say mainframes, distributed computing, time sharing, like the cloud, mobile applications, enterprise applications were always at the spearhead of innovation. And AI is not going to be any different. In fact, AI is going to transform how those business applications are created and used. Speaking of business applications, according to IDC, there's going to be 750 million applications that are going to be created in the next few years, and a shortage of 4 million developers to create those applications. One way to bridge this gap is teaching everyone how to code. And that's a great approach. In fact, that's what we are doing collectively. But we are not going to be able to bridge that gap fast enough. So another approach that I would like to propose is reaching everyone with low-code. Using low-code to empower everyone to achieve more. Very well connected with the mission that we have at Microsoft that you saw today in Scott's keynote. Microsoft low-code offering is the Power Platform. And one thing before we get into the platform, the Power Platform, when we say low-code, many people think about like non-developers, business users, people that are not technical, but in the Power Platform, we welcome everyone. We welcome citizen developers, like business users that have a problem and then they can solve it with our tools, but also professional developers that can start from code or technical assets. There's tools and solutions for everyone. And the thing that makes it even more interesting is when you combine those business users with those professional developers in what we call a fusion team, where they empower one another to achieve better outcomes together. When you think about the Power Platform, there are 5 flagship products. And I will go very briefly through them so we can all learn what they are. The first one, Power BI, for data visualization and analytics. Then Power Apps, for web, desktop, and mobile application creation. In fact, there's a saying I'm going to digress a little bit, but I heard someone saying that if PowerPoint and Excel would have a baby, it would be Power Apps, because it's very similar. You create the app, writing all those boxes and then writing Excel-like formulas. But I digress. So coming back, Power BI for analytics and visualization, Power Apps for web, desktop, and mobile applications, Power Automate for process automation, workflows, and RPA, Power Pages for secure, data-driven, external-facing websites, and Copilot Studio to build and extend copilots. In addition to these 5 products that each one of them democratizes one particular domain, we have something else that I consider probably the secret sauce of the platform. Business applications don't exist in isolation. In general, they need to connect to something, to another system or to another app. The Power Platform comes with more than 1,000 data connectors that allow you to connect to virtually anything. And when I say anything, it's things that are Microsoft properties like Azure, Teams, whatever we have in our offerings, but also industry-leading packages and tools, like, for example, SAP, Salesforce, AWS, you name it, you can connect to it. And the good news is, if you want to connect to something that we don't have a connector for, it is very easy to create your own. So you can connect to virtually anything that exists out there as a software package that has an API, or to any of your existing internal systems, very easily with the Power Platform. Now, when I talk about low-code, I always get 2 questions that I want to share with you. And those questions are, the first one is low-code really a thing? Should I care about low-code? Is that a recognized movement? And one thing that I would say is, yes, it is. And we are at the midpoint of the low-code revolution. According with Gartner, in 2020, less than 25% of the applications were created using low-code technologies. Less than 25%, 2020. By 2026, 75% of all business applications that will be created will use some form of low-code tools. And in fact, and this is a personal opinion, I believe that with the generative AI tools and copilots, the things that we will see in just a few minutes, I believe that that number will be higher. And my hope is that when you leave this room after this session, that you believe the same too. So that's the first one. Is low-code a thing? Yes, it is. And we are in the midpoint of that revolution that we mentioned, and we went through Gartner numbers. The other question is, does Microsoft care about low-code? Is this a thing that is here to stay? If I bet on this, will it be there in a few years? And the answer is a resounding yes. You see, Microsoft D365 is built on the Power Platform. It's a Power Platform solution. So basically, low-code is powering a multi-billion-dollar business for Microsoft that is key to our strategy. And also internally, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of processes and internal applications that we use Power Platform for. So yes, Power Platform is a thing for Microsoft and is key to our strategy and to our execution. And one of the reasons why that's the case is because the unparalleled time to value. Here we have a quote from the COO at HSBC, where he's talking about the ROI that they saw when deploying applications. But that's one thing that we see very widespread across the board. According to Forrester, when you use Power Platform, you can reduce up to 74% the cost of creating an application. And again, I want to stress, once we talk about copilots, we are hoping to make that figure even higher. And this is a good time to bring an example of a company taking advantage of all these technologies and all these tools. And for that, I'm going to use Coca-Cola, which is a company that needs no introduction. It's one of the most valuable brands in the world. As their business keeps growing, their needs for digital transformation to accompany that growth keep growing as well. Coca-Cola found themselves with the need of a lot of applications, and they were creating applications using the regular JavaScript stacks. But the thing that they found frustrating is that every 2 years, some of those frameworks would change, and they would need to spend time re-architecting or changing those applications without much business value. So that's what drove them to try the Power Platform. They started very small. They got a single person that got trained in the platform, and in less than a week created the first application. After that, they created a second application that was an inventory management solution, and they used all those connectors that we mentioned before. They saw how easy it was to create an application that was connected not only to their databases, but also to their SAP system. And to that application, follow other applications, and so on, to the point that they ended up with a sizable Power Platform community, and the constant of all these applications was that increase in return of investment and the rapidly creation of solutions that the platform would bring. Now, moving on, now that we introduced the platform briefly, it's a good time to switch gears to AI. We are in a new era of big AI that transforms how we work. And I think this statement probably a year ago, would have been a little bit, I'm not sure if controversial, but some folks would have maybe have some doubt. But right now, it's a reality that we all embrace, accept, and understand. One of the manifestations of AI in Microsoft product lineup are the copilots. And what is the copilot? Let's stop for a little bit to talk about copilots in Power Platform. So the copilot is using AI as a real-time collaborator. A collaborator that basically can augment the output that you can get out of your effort. Remember that we talk about ROI, return on investment on your efforts. The copilot can augment that significantly, so it can empower you to achieve more. For example, can generate content for you, can spark your creativity by giving you suggestions or helping you to achieve things faster, giving faster inner loops, automate cognitive tasks that have very low value. We will see some examples as we get to demos. But the important thing, one thing that I want to stop into is, if we abstract, the copilot is like a helper that is there to assist you on every turn, either with content or taking action on your behalf. And there's something very interesting in the name of the technology. There's a reason why it's called Copilot that's very intentional and not Autopilot. The idea is that there's always a human in the loop making the decisions and deciding what's the outcome that they want to get. And the Copilot, the only thing that it does, it's empowering that human to accomplish more with less effort. And what that will produce a profound change in how we work, because we have that Copilot working side by side with people. So we will go from people working side by side in teams, as we always did, to people working side by side with AI, where the Copilot is a member of every team that empowers every individual and every team to achieve more. And as you might expect, we talked about the Power Platform. We enumerated all the products that we have. We have one Copilot supporting each one of those products. And this is a good time, now that we went through level set on what the Power Platform is, we talked a little bit about Copilot, to get off the decks and move into a demo. What do you all think? Much better, right? So I'm going to invite Ben Walters, which is already here, to show us an awesome demo of Power Apps Copilot. So Ben?
Thank you, Leon. All right, can we all hear me? No? I'm going to need a mic. Hey, there we go. Now we can all hear me. How are we doing today? We're tired. It's the afternoon. I get it. We got you after lunch, and that's okay. But we're going to rile you up with a really good demo of how you can use Copilot to help you build applications faster. And in addition to that, we're going to show you how you can then take those similar Copilot experiences and infuse them into your application so that your users can take advantage of that in the apps that you build as well. Now, I'm here in my Power Apps studio, and I actually want to go and create myself a new application. And the beauty about Copilot is it's going to step me all the way through the process. Now, I'm a bit of a musician. I like to play guitar, so I'm going to go and create a new application. I'm just going to ask in natural language. And what I'm going to ask the Copilot to do for me here, I'm going to scroll this back up to the top, and I think it was that one. I'm going to say I want an app that tracks the delivery schedule for orders of guitars, including the fields like the type of guitar being ordered, delivery address, the date of shipping, quantity, the recipient, just giving it some information in natural language that I want this to be able to do for me. And then I'm going to simply click Send. Now, as Leon said, it is a Copilot, not an autopilot. And so what's going to happen now is Copilot's going to go through and take that information I gave it and start to step me through the process and the steps that I need to do to build my application. And the first thing I need is I need somewhere to store this data. And so what you can see here is Copilot's actually gone ahead and given me a suggested set of data for what I need to be able to build this out. So you can see it's included an order ID. I didn't ask it for an order ID, but it knew in context that I'd need that if I was going to be shipping orders. It's giving me a survey, which is not helpful from Copilot right now, so we're going to skip that. It's asked me about what type of guitar, and it's storing that. It's giving me some addresses. So this is all sample information that I can use while building my app out. Now, a couple of things I forgot that I'd also like to include. And I'm going to come down here and put in another little text. As we said, Copilot is with me all the way through what I do. So I can always go back to Copilot and ask it to do additional things for me, and I'm in control the entire time. So I'm going to get it to add a new line or a new column for guitar brand. I'm going to add a multi-line column where we can add notes later on. So if I have issues with my customers, I can go and do that. And I also want a little bit more data in my sample app so I know what I'm working with. So I'm going to put that into the message here, and then I'm going to go ahead and click send. And again, Copilot's going to go off and assess each of those instructions and make those updates to the data schema for me. Now, at this point, nothing has been committed to any systems. It's literally all sitting in memory, and I'm in this generation phase. I'm in the working phase where I can start to build this out. And you can see in a couple of minutes there, it's gone through, it's added in the additional data, sample information for me. And if I scroll across here, it's also added in my guitar brand. Now, for those out there who know guitar brands, it's not just put in brand 1, brand 2, brand 3. It's actually intelligent enough to know in context what are major guitar brands that might align to these types of guitars. And so it's given me data that is really, really useful for me to work with. All right, I'm happy with my data structure. Next step is to simply click Create App. Now, at this point, Copilot is going off and taking a number of tasks. The first thing it is doing is taking that data schema and that sample data and committing that to Dataverse. Now, Dataverse is a database platform that allows your end users to be able to build database structures like this in a controlled environment that allows you as the business to continue to manage that information without them having to have a lot of deep knowledge from database building and building their own data tables and reference keys and all those kind of things, and something that you probably wouldn't invest a DB admin to do for a small app that someone's building to help get their job done quicker. After it's committed that, it's then going and building the application for me. And that's what it's doing right now, is it's actually going and creating that new Power App for me in a place where it'll be ready to go. So we're going to give this just a minute. It feels like forever on stage, but I promise you, when you're doing this at your desk, it feels much quicker. And you can see there it is. My app is there, and it's up and ready to go. And when I say up and ready to go, it's wired up, it has functions, all of the controls there work, and I can start to actually work with this as is right now. But I want to do a couple of other things before I go and test this app out. Now, you can see I've still got Copilot on the side. It's there with me through the whole experience. But in addition to that, I also have Copilot available to me in context. So I have a gallery control here with my list of orders. And the first field that's put up there is the order date. Not super useful for me. So what I want to do is change that. And you can see as I click on that field, Copilot comes up. And it can actually start to give me ideas of maybe what I want to do with that control as a separate idea. So I'm going to go and click my text formatting. Try that one more time for good luck. Oh, it's thinking. The network gods are hopefully going to be with me soon. We're thinking. We're going to try this again. We're going to give this one more shot. Oh, there we go. It's popped up, finally. It was just pulling back all of the ideas. It was taking a bit of time to think about what we could do with that field. And what it's done here is it's actually given me ideas of different items that I could put in that field or in that gallery. And so what I'd like to do is actually update this with the order ID, because as I'm searching through my list, I want to make sure that I'm using the order ID. So I'm simply going to go ahead and hit apply, and it'll update the expression for me without me having to know how to write that expression, so that what's shown now in my gallery as the top line item is the order ID. So I'm happy with that, and now I'm going to go ahead and preview this. Now, as I said, this app is 90% done. I could go and spend time, putting some different colors in there and logos and those kind of things as well. But from a functionality standpoint, this is ready to go. I can go and create new records. I can save. I can uncommit those. I can search my data. I've got a search function in there. I can navigate through these. I can delete. I can update. So really, really useful that all this is wired up for me. In addition to that, I also have the ability to take this app offline if I want. And so if I have my guys in the warehouse who are packing these orders and shipping them out and they have network issues or connectivity problems, the app can go offline, still continue to work, and when that's available again or when that connection is available again, it'll resync those changes back for me. In addition to that, because I have guys in the warehouse who are using a multitude of devices, I can also test what this is going to look like in different form factors. So I've built this app once, I can deploy it as is now, and I can actually have anyone with any device go ahead and use this. And I can check what that's going to look like in a phone, I can rotate that phone and see what that's going to look like if someone decides to rotate that to landscape view. I can see what that looks like on an iPad or a tablet device as well. So really useful way for me to be able to build these things quickly and easily right here with just a couple of phrases. Now, from here, I can go back to my edit canvas, And I can actually continue to work with Copilot to make more changes to this. But one of the things I want to know how to do is, how do I publish my app? I think I'm ready to go. And so I can actually not only have Copilot make actions for me within this application, but also ask Copilot questions. And at this point, it can go off and find those instructions for me. And I think Copilot is asleep in the US right now, but that's okay. And it actually bring back those instructions for me and give me ideas of how I can go and publish that. So I no longer have to try and hunt through menus and figure out what the next step is. I can simply go ahead, hit save, and then publish. Now, I have a version of this application that I published earlier in this next tab, and it's up and running. And it's ready to go, and you can see that the data is similar. It was generated earlier today. But the thing about this now is that I now have the option to infuse Copilot into the experience for the users of this application as well. And if I click up here in the menu, I've got this new feature where Copilot will actually come up as a sidecar. Now, at this point, I'm not editing the application anymore. I'm working with this in production. I'm in the real world. And so what Copilot can now do for me is it can start to analyze the data in the application. So I could come into here and I could say, you know, what's my guitar delivery schedules? It gives me some prompts there. And I can go and ask it questions around how many deliveries do I have? What's coming up? How many guitars need to go to certain addresses? And because Copilot is tied to the data within the app, it can give me responses, not that time, on what's happening here. So I could say, let's say, how many Fenders are going to be delivered? We'll try that one more time. We'll see how we go. This is the joy, by the way, of live demos, and Copilot especially, is sometimes it'll give me the responses I want, and sometimes it won't. And this is one of the times when it's not going to give me answers I want. Let's just ask, how many deliveries do I have? One last go on this. We'll see if it can actually pick up my data on this one. And if not, we're going to move on. There we go. Perfect. Actually come down and show you that. So at this point, and this is actually a new feature that's still in preview and still in early preview, but this is where we can start to take advantage of not just using Copilot to build my applications, but also give those experiences to my end users as well. And so this is how, with Copilot and Power Apps, I can go from having nothing at all, and in a couple of minutes, have a fully functioning application with the same Copilot experiences I use to build that I can also give to my users. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Leon for a little bit.
Thank you very much, Ben. That was great. So recapping a little bit, we saw like the copilots in Power Apps. So there are mainly two forms of copilot that we have in Power Apps. One is what we call the Maker Copilot. That is the one that you use to build your applications. One interesting thing to mention of the Maker Copilot is parts of it. For example, the part where Ben described what the application needs to do and he started to co-design the table with like the Copilot and whatnot, that is generally available on all the enabled regions. And Australia is one of them. So that's generally available to be used right now. The rest of the parts of the Maker Copilot, for example, the inline gestures and continuing the conversation in Canva and a few other things, still in public preview, and we have new features coming to public preview every month. In fact, one thing to say, when you look at the Power Platform copilots and they don't do something, I would encourage you to always add the word yet. It doesn't do this yet, because eventually we will get them to do everything and we'll make them awesome. But coming back to this, Maker Copilot, it's what you use to build your application. Parts of it are generally available. Some other parts are in public preview. But nevertheless, all available for you to use today. Then we have what we call the App Copilot, which is basically adding copilots not for the builders of the app, but for the users of the app. And in that case, we have the panel at the right-hand side that Ben was showing, and also we are adding contextual experiences. When you interact with certain controls, we will bring a copilot to help you, for example, write text, sort a list, and things like that. So just to recap for Power Apps, Maker to build applications, the App Copilot to use the applications. The App Copilot is in public preview. We also have copilots in Power Automate. So in Power Automate, you can describe what you want to automate in a sentence, and the copilot will build it for you in seconds. Let me show you, I have a video here that goes a little bit fast, but I will talk through it as it goes. It's a little bit fast-paced, but let's try it. So basically, you can describe similarly to Power Apps, what do you want? Copilot is going to suggest a workflow, and not only that, it's going to add the connectors that are needed to connect to the different sources. And in this case, add an approval as well. So with just that, you get a workflow fully fledged that you can start using. And even if there's some part of the workflow that you don't understand, you can ask the Copilot to explain you what does it do. So as you could see, I could ask for something, and using natural language and a conversation with the Copilot, I could get my flow done, connected to different systems. Remember that we talked about the connectors, but also for the parts that were not clear to me, I could ask the Copilot to explain me and to help me understand what it did. Power Pages, that is our product for external, data-driven, secure websites, also has a Copilot that helps you create those external websites. And you can use, in that case, natural language to create pages, forms. Let's take a look at another video to see how it works. So basically, in this case, I have a website for a bank, and I'm going to ask the Copilot to create a page for a student loan application. I got the page created, and now the next thing that I want to do is have some text in the page. But sometimes, for some of us, I'm not a copywriter, so it's not that easy for me to write that text. And that's where the Copilot can come to my help. So you see, we are going to add a piece of text and engage the Copilot and ask it to write a sentence explaining the student loans and whatnot. And when I get the results, of course, I can get the usual controls that you may expect, like tone, length, etc. And whenever I'm happy with it, I accept it. And now my website has that description with better quality without being a copywriter myself in just a few seconds. Of course, after I have like the page and that, I want to add a form so people can ask the actual loan. So in this case, I ask the Copilot to create the form, and I can have a conversation with the Copilot to define what that form is. And just by asking that form, I would get a form with a decent schema. It will give me suggestions on what to change, but since it looks good, it will be accepted. And once I have the form, if I want to make it look up to my brand, I can generate some CSS and then edit that CSS in Visual Studio Code. So what you could see here is that there were many tasks that I needed to do, and the Copilot helped me to accelerate accomplishing those tasks, but I was always in control. In fact, I was always the creative mind behind what we were doing. What the Copilot did was accelerating, accomplishing all those things that, in general, there's not much value in me creating CSS by hand, or on placing all the controls in a form, or on adding like 20 rows to a table. All those things, remember what we were saying, that the Copilot can augment what I can do. It takes all that minutia and those manual tasks and things like that, so I can be more creative and create better solutions and spend all my time doing what really matters, that is solving my business problems. If you're speaking about Copilot, of course, we need to talk about Copilot Studio. And I really like the tagline, your Copilot, your way. So with Copilot Studio, you can create your own Copilots, or you can customize Copilots created with Copilot Studio. And here is a place where I want to do two things. First, I would like to pause to mention one thing. Today, Scott, when he was talking about in the keynote how the tools that we use in Azure to create our Copilots are available for every one of you, so you can create the same, I want to share a little bit, how do we do that in Power Platform itself? So if you look at the Copilot that is in D365 Sales, the one that shows at the right-hand side of the screen, that Copilot is the App Copilot control that Ben was showing before, backed by a Microsoft Copilot Studio instance behind the scenes, which also has been grounded over Dataverse data and D365 skills. So if you think about that architecture, the App Copilot control and Microsoft Copilot Studio and your own skills and Dataverse, those are things that are available for every one of you to create very similar experience. So whatever we use to create our applications and infra in the Power Platform is available for you to do the same in your own applications. And with that, as we talk about Copilot Studio, I think it's a really good time to ask Ben for another demo. Awesome. So Ben, take it away.
Will do. Okay, so as Leon was saying, Copilot Studio is where you can start to build your own Copilot experiences, infused with your own information, your own IP, answering the questions that you want. And we can do this really, really quickly and have a fully functional Copilot within minutes. Now, I'm in Copilot Studio here, and what I'm going to do is go and create a new Copilot. Now, I'm a bit of a Marvel fan, so I'm going to call my Copilot Jarvis, because let's be honest, who wouldn't want Jarvis? And I'm going to say what language I want that Copilot to run in, which in this case, we're going to be doing English. They don't have English Oz. I know, I try. They won't do it. And what I want to do, though, is I do want to give it a website. So I'm going to put in here Microsoft.com as my website. Now, this website is a source of what we call our generative answers. Normally, when you build a Copilot experience, you have a set of very fixed responses where you want accurate responses to come through. When am I opening and closing hours? What's the menu? What products are available? Things that are very, very specific. But with generative answers, I can broaden that out, and I can take advantage of information that's already been published and have my Copilot fall back on that if it can't answer a question that I don't have a topic for. And to do that, I simply put in the website. So in that case, I'm going to go ahead and click Create. Now at this point, Copilot Studio is going ahead, it's provisioning my Copilot for me, it's giving me a space, it's creating some of those base topics so it can say hello and goodbye and giving it a personality, it's throwing a bunch of stuff into its stomach, including coffee, so that it's a happy Copilot. And then in a couple of seconds here, we'll have our Copilot up and ready to go. So we'll leave that just a second to finish. Again, it feels much quicker when you do it and you're not on stage in front of a bunch of people. Okay. So here we go. My Copilot is done, and it's up and ready to go. All I've done is given it a name and a website. And the beauty is I can ask this Copilot questions based on what's there. So for example, I could say, what is Copilot Studio? See how self-aware this thing is, right? And so what's happening now is the Copilot is looking at my topics, which honestly only have some basic topics of hello and goodbye. And it's finding that it can't actually get an answer for that. So what it's going to do is it's going to fall back to a Bing custom search. And that Bing custom search is then going to give me a set of responses that it's going to use GPT to then summarize and give me a response on what Copilot Studio is. And if we scroll up there, you can see it's giving me this response that Copilot Studio is a platform that allows you to extend Copilot and build your own Copilots, et cetera, et cetera. Now, it pulled all of this from the Microsoft.com website because that's all I've given it. And because of that, it's also given me a link here where I can actually link out to the original source of data. So if I want to know exactly where it got that from, I can do that. And I can ask it other questions as well. Like I could say, what is Microsoft's, if I could type properly, it'd be great, approach to responsible AI. And again, it can go deeper into that website to find that information for me. Now, this is really awesome because what it means is that I can leverage all of that information that I've published in the past. I don't have to go and create specific topics for that. I can focus the topic work that I need to build on just the things that I need to focus on. Now, if I click deeper into generative answers here in the settings for my Copilot, super useful that I can use a public-facing website. But in this case, I also have information sitting within my enterprise that I want my Copilot to have access to. And in this case, it's information sitting on my HR website. In fact, we have this Contoso employee handbook that sits on my HR website, and this contains a whole bunch of information. Things like how do I do expenses, what holidays do we have off, a whole bunch of things that you will see in there, and it's all maintained by HR, and they all have it sitting on their website here. So what I can do is I can actually take this internal URL and add this as a second source. And I'm going to go in there and hit add and simply just put that in there. Now, alternately, I could potentially also take that document and drag and drop that into the Copilot itself so it can reference that in the future. But because HR is updating everything in their location, I want to make sure I've got the most up-to-date information, so I'm going to leave that there and hit save. So all of that information sitting in a Word document under my HR website. I'm going to restart this just to tidy it up a little bit. And I'm going to come to my Copilot now and say, what holidays? Please have off. And it deals with my bad spelling, which is great. So I'm going to ask it, what holidays do Contoso employees have off? Now, it's doing the same thing. It's actually trying to find a topic for this, which doesn't exist. And then it's going to fall back to that Bing search, which is not going to give me a response. So it's going to use that internal search to do that. And you can see what it's done there is it's actually gone ahead and indexed that Word document for me to return that information. So really, really useful way for me to be able to broaden the capabilities of my Copilot and allow it to not only answer questions that I specify, but kind of give it this open-ended controlled space where it can also get information for me to be able to do that. Now, this is what we call generative answers. There's also an additional feature here where we can take what we call generative actions. And generative actions means that I can now take all of those connectors that Leon was referring to earlier and give my Copilot access to those as well. And so now my Copilot has a source of being able to use information there and also connectivity to other systems, so I can start to not only have my Copilot just give me answers, but also take action for me with my permission as well. So it really helps to broaden what we can do with our copilots. And as you saw, in a couple of minutes, we've gone from having nothing to a fully functional copilot that I can use to go and answer those questions for my employees. With that, I'll hand back to Leon.
Thank you very much, Ben. So to recap, two of the key things that we just saw is generative answers and generative actions, which are in public preview, are awesome innovations that change the way in which we can create these bots. Think of it, in the past, to do what Ben just did with generative answers, you would have had to create all these topics, a lot of manual work to define those answers. Right now, just by pointing your copilot to a data source, that's all you need to train it. Same thing with generative actions. So really great changes into how do we do authoring as well, where AI is also applied to the creation of the copilots, and all of these are available in public preview right now. Actually, everything that we talked today is backed by live code that is ready for everyone to try. And as we think about all these tools, one thing to think that is kind of like a mind-blowing stat, there are over 230,000 organizations that have used Copilot in Power Platform. Think of it, a year ago, none of these things were there. And today, you have all these organizations, all these people that are taking advantage of all these great technologies that you saw today. And we are just getting started. Now, as we see all these organizations using Copilot, we see very encouraging signals in terms of the outcomes, the impact that Copilot has in the work that these people do. And we found a pretty good trifecta of higher success, more satisfaction, and higher productivity. Let's go through these three numbers briefly. So 64% of customers using Copilot are more likely to complete their first application connected to data over folks that are not using the Copilot. If we compare the customer satisfaction with whatever indicators that we use to measure it, of customers using Copilot and customers not using Copilot, customers using Copilot have 65% higher satisfaction scores. And we see productivity increases in every task that we bring Copilot to, up to 80% in some cases. For example, we have like scenario where you can create an application or create a table with Copilot from an Excel file. That particular scenario, when you do it that way, more than 80% increase in the productivity of accomplishing the same task with the technologies existing before. So again, more successful, more satisfied, and more productive. And we are just getting started, and we want to see it continue going in this direction. Now that we established how awesome Copilots in Power Platform are and how easy do they make creating business applications and software solutions, it is time to talk a little bit about how do we roll them safely and responsibly through the organizations. There are two questions that I get very frequently when I do discussions with customers or executive discussions about this topic. The first one is what happens with my data. And Scott mentioned that today in the keynote, but I'm going to mention that again, that your data stays with your organization. We don't use your data to train our models. Your data is not used to train a model that can benefit a competitor. And also all our copilots are subject to the highest standards of responsible AI and deployment safety for AI. So again, your data stays with you and is treated with the maximum standards of responsible AI. So let's take that out of the way. The second one is, now that creating applications and flows and all those things are so easy, how do I prevent getting against shadow IT, like all these things all over the place and losing control over what's happening in my organization because these things are so easy to create? And the important thing to say is that governance and having that type of visibility and control are at the core of the Power Platform, and more so in the age of Copilot, where we are making the things easier and easier. So we need to make sure that we have the right guardrails. And we have a whole team devoted to make sure that that's part of our core product value prop. So when it comes to security and compliance, I will go through a few capabilities. These are, of course, not all-encompassing at all, but a few things that I want to call out. And the first one is Dataverse security. So if you are using Dataverse, that is our SaaS database, that is part of database, that is part of the Power Platform, we have role-based access control, and we have also role-based access control for the applications. So all those permissions are honored by the copilots. So if an individual does not have access to certain data, certain applications, and is asking something to the Copilot will honor those RBAC permissions and will not show them to them. Also, we have very strict data compliance. So we have industry-specific regulations for data collection. We are compliant with GDPR. We have self-managed encryption keys, so your data is safe and secure. So all of the things we do out of the box. So you should rest assured that your data is treated in a compliant way. We have integration with Microsoft Sentinel for our login, for our admin login, so you can get visibility and control over what admins do. And the most important piece that I wanted to touch upon is managed environments. Managed environments are a core component of the Power Platform that are the container where you deploy solutions, which is designed to give admins more visibility and more control with less effort. So basically, when you create all these applications and all these flows with the Copilot that are so easy to create and whatnot, and you put them in managed environments, what will happen is your admins, the admins in your organization, will be able to have visibility into all of them and avoid surprises. Not only that, they will have visibility and they will be able to establish a lot of guardrails such that they know what's going on, but that they can keep in control of their Power Platform state or of their application state or flow state. Basically, everything that happens, they can proactively see and they can control. An interesting example of applying all these technologies is what we see in Shell, where basically they have a very big low-code practice, and what they did to roll it out at scale in their organization is they created a governance model that is based in zones. So they created environments in different zones, like a tiered system, where basically the lower zone, the zone 1, has lower exposure to capabilities, is more locked down, basically. That is what they expose to the citizen developers, that are the ones that are the business users automating a process, or the ones that don't have technical inclination. In their zone 2, because they have a center of excellence with specialists, if one of those specialists work with one of those citizen developers, if they collaborate, they have more aperture to connectors or other things that the platform has. And the zone 3 is the one that provides full access of all the elements of the platform, but that's only available to professional developers. This type of system, among having, of course, a center of excellence set in place and a great community, is what enables Shell to grow their DIY, do-it-yourself community to 4,000 Power Platform developers. Actually, they were aiming for a few hundred, but the initiative was so successful that went beyond what they were expecting. And the interesting thing, the first year, when they rolled out the first application, they could save $3 million with just one of their first apps. And following that success, they launched 75 more apps, resulting in multi-million-dollar saving, and they saw that formula being repeated year over year. That community, the DIY community, is not only a technical community with governance and things like that, but also they have a community that provides skilling and also everything that you would expect in a community of practice. In fact, they have a yearly conference where I have the privilege of participating in the keynote last year, and one of the things that I saw, which connects very well what we were talking before, is given their level of maturity, they were already rolling out all these Copilot and generative AI initiatives into their organizations as well. So they were getting ready ahead of time to be ahead of the curve. So with this completes everything that we have to share today. Your feedback is super. I have two things that I want to ask. The first one is feedback is super valuable. Feedback is a gift. So if you have a few minutes and can fill up the survey, either by going to that URL or scanning the QR code, that would be fantastic. And the other thing that I wanted to add is a big thank you to everyone for being here, and to tell you that I look forward to see all the things that you build with Copilot in the Power Platform. If you do, and you have applications built with Copilot, I would love to learn about them, so feel free to reach out directly with whatever you build. I'm speaking on my own terms, but the team is the same. We are always happy to hear from any of you, so looking forward to see the awesome things that you build, and when you do, don't hesitate to write and let me know. Thanks, everyone, and hope that you have a great rest of your day.
We hope you enjoyed this digital event. We have specialists on standby to answer your questions for a short while. To ask a question, type it into the chat window now and we'll get to it as quickly as we can. You'll also find a resources widget in the bottom middle of your screen. We've put additional links in there to learn more about what we've covered today. Lastly, tell us how you found this experience through the survey widget. If you're not staying for the Q&A, thank you for attending and we hope to see you again soon. We hope you enjoyed this digital event. Thank you for attending, and we hope to see you again soon.